On the night of July 17th, 1970, 5 inmates serving life sentences made a daring escape from Dorchester Penitentiary in New Brunswick, Canada. The escapees were John Lee Parker, 27, Jack Fisher, 32, Sam Wetmore, 36, George Hannington, 29, and Lemuel Fleming, 41. After making their break, they found themselves stumbling upon what appeared to be an abandoned farm, roughly 20 kilometers from the prison. 2 days later, only 2 of them lived to tell the harrowing tale to the warden. Here's how John Lee Parker described it. We'd been planning the escape for months, hoping to disappear into America where nobody would recognize us. The goal was to put as much distance as possible between us and Dorchester. We made our move around 2 a.m. under the cover of darkness. Once we cleared the prison walls, we took off running north, figuring we'd head west after crossing the Memramcook River. I can't say for sure how long we ran, but by the time the sun began to rise, we spotted a farm. We were beyond exhausted, starving, and desperate for water, so we decided it was safe enough to take a break. The place looked like it had been deserted for years. The house was in bad shape, with weeds and bushes overgrown all around, and the barn looked ready to collapse. We weren't sure if anyone still lived there, so we approached cautiously. When we got closer, we split into 2 groups. 3 of us went around to the back door to block any escape route, while the other 2 knocked on the front door. The plan was simple. If anyone was home, we'd tie them up, grab food and water, and get back on the run. I waited at the back door with 2 others, and after a few tense minutes, the door creaked open. It was Jack. He said the house was empty, so we all went inside to scavenge for supplies. The inside was just as bad as the outside, filthy, with a smell that made it clear the place had been abandoned for a long time. We searched around and only found a few cans of meat and beans. The tap inside the house was dry, so Jack sent Sam outside to look for a well. After about 10 minutes, we heard Sam yell, "Get out here now!" We all rushed out the back door. As soon as we stepped outside, Sam's voice echoed again. "I'm in the barn. Get over here now." We ran toward the barn, noticing the doors were slightly ajar. Before entering, we hesitated, exchanging uneasy glances. We were already on edge, nerves frayed from everything that had happened so far. I was the first to push through the barn doors, which creaked as they opened. The inside was dim, shadows stretching across the floor. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I spotted Sam standing a few feet ahead, a strange expression on his face. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught sight of someone else, a man, just a few meters away from Sam. I turned to get a better look. Sure enough, there was a man standing there, watching us. He had long, silver hair that hung past his shoulders, and he looked to be around 60 years old. The rest of the crew filed in behind me, and the moment they saw him, they froze. We stood there, staring at both Sam and this stranger. After what felt like an eternity, Jack finally broke the silence. "Who are you, old man? Do you live here?" The man didn't respond. He just kept his eyes locked on me, saying nothing. Another tense minute dragged by before Jack, his patience wearing thin, asked again, this time with a bit more bite in his voice. "Who are you? Do you live here or not?" Jack was quick to anger, and I knew this could go south fast if the man didn't speak up. Eventually, the old man slowly turned his head toward Jack and in a calm, steady voice replied, I do live here, and I've been here for a long time. There was something in his voice, a faint accent that I couldn't quite place. Without missing a beat, Jack ordered Sam and George, grab that chair and find some rope. We're tying this old man up. They moved quickly, knowing better than to question Jack when he was like this. They grabbed a chair and some baling twine, and as they bound the man to the chair, he didn't resist or protest. He just kept staring at Jack, his face blank, almost eerily calm. A feeling of unease crept over me. Something about this man didn't sit right. It reminded me of my old man, who had been a monster to my family, and I had learned early on how to sense danger. But I kept those thoughts to myself. Showing fear in front of the others wasn't an option. Jack, still glaring at the old man, turned to Sam and said, grab those cans of food we found in the house. And did you find any water? Yeah, Sam replied. There's a well out back. As Sam headed off, Jack turned his attention back to the old man, his voice dripping with suspicion. So, what's your story, old man? How do you survive in a place like this? The old man didn't say a word at first. He just stared at Jack with a piercing gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady and calm. Since it appears I'll be stuck with you for a while, I might as well share a story. I was born many years ago in Sisteron, France. When I was young, around your age, something happened to me that condemned me to live forever. Now, I am left to endure endless days on this wretched earth. I have no fear of death, only a yearning for it. By the way you're dressed, I can tell where you're from. I'm not interested in your business or your plans. Just do me a favor and leave before nightfall. At that moment, Sam came back with the canned food and a bucket of water, causing us all to jump a bit. Jack, trying to lighten the mood, said, forget the ramblings of this old coot. Sam, hand me the food and water. The old man's words and the way he delivered them unsettled me. He didn't seem like a madman, but someone who knew something we didn't. The old man lowered his gaze and fell silent, his eyes never leaving us. We set up in a part of the barn where the light was decent and began to eat. We shared the meager cans of food, while the others chatted about their dreams of escaping to America. Despite their attempts at light-hearted banter, I couldn't shake the feeling that this old man was a serious threat. Once we had finished eating, Jack declared, we need someone to take the first watch in the loft. The area around us is open for miles, so it's best if we move at night to avoid being seen. We crossed several rivers and went upstream before coming here, so it'll take the dogs a while to pick up our scent. George stepped up to take the first shift, and the rest of us spread out in the barn, trying to find a comfortable spot to sleep. The next thing I knew, Lemuel was shaking me awake, telling me it was my turn for watch. I must have been asleep for a few hours. As I climbed the ladder to the loft, I glanced over at the old man. He was still staring at me with that same unreadable expression. It was as if he was completely unbothered by the fact that 5 escaped convicts had tied him up and could do anything next. Reaching the loft, I looked out through one of the windows and saw the late afternoon light fading. We'd need to be on the move soon. I couldn't help but wonder what Jack planned to do with the old man before we left. I collapsed onto a barrel the others had set up for lookout and quickly slipped into my own thoughts. I was jolted awake realizing I'd dozed off. Panicking, I scrambled off the barrel and glanced around. It was nearly dusk. I raced down the ladder to check on the others. They must still be asleep. Otherwise, they'd have definitely roused me by now. As I hit the ground and turned to check on the old man, my heart sank. He was gone. I sprinted to the chair where we'd bound him. The baling twine we used to tie him was shredded and strewn across the floor. I yelled for the others to wake up and come over. Within moments, they were at my side, equally startled. Sam and George had secured him well, and there was no way the old man had the strength to tear through that twine on his own. The barn was growing darker by the minute, so I turned to Jack for direction. Just then, a noise echoed from one of the back rooms. Lemuel piped up, "Jack, we need to get out of here. It's getting too dark, and we should be moving anyway." Jack shot back, "I'm not leaving until we've dealt with that old man. He knows we're fugitives. That noise is probably him hiding in one of those rooms. If you're too scared to come with me, stay put." "Fine, but make it quick," I snapped back. Jack strode purposefully toward the back of the barn, where there were at least 3 rooms and a few stables. He always put on a tough front, but I had my doubts about his bravery. The 4 of us watched as Jack vanished into the murkiness. The barn was nearly pitch black, save for a sliver of moonlight creeping through the gaps in the rotting wood. My nerves were shot. I was sweating and trembling so violently, I felt faint. Then, a menacing growl pierced the darkness, followed by Jack's abrupt, terrified scream, "You!" before he was abruptly cut off. We didn't waste a second. We bolted toward the barn doors, only to find them stubbornly stuck. No matter how hard we pushed, they wouldn't open. We fumbled with the barn doors, trying to figure out why they wouldn't budge. It didn't take long to discover the problem. A heavy chain and padlock had been looped through the handles, trapping us inside. "What the hell do we do now?" George asked, panic creeping into his voice. "We find a way out, that's what," I snapped. "We need to get out of here, fast." "Let's search for another exit," I suggested. We began feeling our way along the barn walls, desperately searching for any kind of opening. Just then, I heard a low, menacing growl and the sound of something or someone on all 4s charging towards us. I shouted, "What is that?" Without warning, Sam's scream shattered the silence. "Help! Something's got me!" he yelled, his voice filled with terror. The scream continued, then abruptly cut off, as if his throat had been torn out. "Move it, Johnny. We need to get the hell out of here now," Lemuel shouted. I didn't respond. I just sprinted away from Sam's horrifying screams. As I ran through the dark barn, I kept bumping into things, nearly knocking myself out a few times. When I reached what I hoped was the back of the barn, I paused, gasping for breath. The barn was eerily silent now. No movement, no noise. It felt like the world had stopped turning. After a few tense minutes, I heard a whisper in the darkness. "Johnny, is that you?" "It's Jack. I think I found a way out. Come here." I froze, my mind racing. I'd heard Jack's terrifying scream. Could he possibly still be alive? The whisper came again, more insistent. "Johnny, come over here." I wasn't sure what to do, but standing still was not an option. I began creeping towards the sound of Jack's voice. Just then, I tripped over something on the floor. It emitted a grunting noise that made me jump back in alarm. "Johnny, it's Jack. I need your help." I reached down to assist Jack when my hand brushed against something warm and sticky on the floor. Bringing my hand to my face, the unmistakable scent of blood hit me. I fumbled around in the dark until I found Jack's arm and helped him up, his condition clearly dire. With the moonlight filtering through the barn's gaps, I spotted the exit Jack had mentioned. We moved as quickly as we could, Jack barely managing to stay on his feet as he bled heavily. Once we reached the hole where the light streamed in, I shoved at the barn's paneling. It creaked open, just wide enough for us to squeeze through. Outside, we made our way back along the route we had come. I kept glancing back nervously, convinced we were being followed. We walked through the night, desperate to put as much distance between us and the farm as possible. By 2:10 p.m., with dawn breaking, we stumbled upon a busy road and sought help. It wasn't long before someone realized we were escaped convicts, and the police quickly arrived. I was sure Jack wouldn't make it through the night, but he proved me wrong. After John Lee Parker recounted his ordeal to the warden, the authorities were alerted and an investigation of the farm was launched. Upon entering the barn, the officers noted the strong smell of decay. They found the old man sitting in the loft, calmly reading a book. When questioned about his identity, he simply said, "What took you so long?" He was arrested on suspicion of murdering Sam Wetmore, George Hannington, and Lemuel Fleming. As the search continued, a hidden room was discovered beneath one of the barn's floors, containing the skeletal remains of dozens of people, including Sam and Lemuel. The bones were mostly stripped clean, save for a few patches of fresh tissue. Over the following month, an exhaustive search of the entire property was conducted. While the exact number of bodies found was never determined, it was estimated that up to 100 individuals may have been buried on the farm. George's remains were never located. The house was also thoroughly examined, revealing numerous historical items, some dating back to the 1700s, along with an old photograph of a man who resembled the old man. Experts identified the photograph as originating from France in the 1850s. How or when the old man came to live on the farm, which had been abandoned for 30 years, remains a mystery. He was imprisoned and stayed there until 1984, when he mysteriously disappeared. Despite an organized search, he was never found. Subsequent owners of the land reported seeing a strange, elderly man wandering around the farm's edges, sometimes standing motionless and staring before disappearing into the trees. The old man, who never revealed his name, became known simply as the old man. When asked by the warden if John Lee Parker's account was accurate, his only response was, "I don't deny it." Jack survived his injuries, but had to have his left arm amputated due to the extensive damage. His story corroborated John's account. When the warden inquired about the cause of death for the other men, John's chilling reply was, "A werewolf." For more chilling horror stories, subscribe to Network Nightmare.